Greetings to our audience here at Singapore Blockchain Week. We are so pleased that you've taken the time to join us today for our panel, which is entitled, What's Next for STOs and Digital Securities? Debunking the Myths from the Front Lines. My name is Rachel McIntosh, and I'm a podcast host at Finance Magnates. I'm going to be the moderator of this panel today. So I'm so pleased to have the privilege to discuss this very important topic with some of the leading experts in the cryptocurrency industry. So I'll briefly introduce them now. I'll ask them to talk a little bit more thoroughly about what they do in a few moments. I apologize if I pronounce some names wrong, but here we go. We have here with us today Remo Hammerberg, co-founder and CEO of Ignium, Evan Griffin, who's the founder at Tangible, Daryl Parker, the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of COG Network, Zoran Jukanovic, President of the Capital Market Authority in Montenegro, hello, and Kevin Mirko, the founder and CEO of CoinMetro. So before we dive into today's discussion, I'd like to set the scene a little bit. So when security token offerings, or STOs, first appeared several years ago, analysts and investors alike saw huge potential. At last, there was this technology with the capability to leapfrog securities markets into the future. And we thought we had really arrived at that moment. But things didn't really turn out that way. After all, these traditional securities markets, which were largely run on centralized digital systems at best, and paper and pen systems at worst, could finally have the opportunity to be transformed with the use of blockchain technology into decentralized, immutable marketplaces where ownership could be transferred at low cost and with great ease. Several years down the line, though, in spite of the initial hype surrounding security token offerings, there really hasn't been that much development in STOs. So today we're going to address a few things. First of all, why is this? Second of all, what are the practical obstacles in the way of the development of the STO market? And also, what are the benefits of pursuing STOs, and do those benefits outweigh the challenges? Our discussion today is going to last roughly 45 minutes. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and talk a bit more about what they do, starting with Kevin Mirko. Kevin, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thanks, Rachel. Great introduction. Appreciate that. Big thanks to Singapore Blockchain Week for letting us do this and put this together. So I'm Kevin Mirko. I'm CEO at a company called CoinMetro based in Estonia. To keep it short, it's an exchange combined with, let's say, a challenger bank. I'm also co-founder at Ignium. You'll hear from Remo about Ignium as well, which is we basically have built a CSD, or Central Securities Depository, on the back of DLT technology. And I'm also co-founder of something called the European Crypto Association, which is a lobbying group that goes around talking to regulators and trying to get them to understand how they can benefit with their country and what they do every day in their offices using blockchain and other similar technologies, and so that they understand what crypto is, what it isn't, and I think that's very important. And most of my experience comes from, well, capital markets and FX. So I have about 20 some odd years experience in the FX markets.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Evan, I'll pass the mic to you next.
Thanks, Rachel, and g'day, guys. Yeah, I'm the representative director with Tangible. It's a company incorporated up there in Hokkaido, Japan. We've been doing property developments on a small scale, or a personal scale, for the last decade, really. And yeah, we incorporated Tangible to spread our wings a little bit and then develop some larger properties. Yeah, so I spend my time between Japan and Hong Kong, and yeah, we're pretty involved up there.
Okay, great to hear. Thank you, Evan. Remo, I'll pass the mic to you next.
Thanks. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Ignium, and Ignium is a company providing cross-border settlement and custody services for the digital securities. And effectively, what it does connects globally the issuers and the investors across the globe, and addressing the problem of fragmentation of the markets, which we have a chance to discuss much more detail. My background goes, for the last 20 years, I've been practicing attorney in the field of capital markets, financial services, and advising fintech companies, and also financial market infrastructure companies such as depositories, central counterparties, central banks, as well as exchanges. So that's what I've been doing, and now wrapping up my things in the law practice and diving into the entrepreneurship and fintech with all my legs and hands.
Thank you very much. I love it. All my legs and hands. It makes you sound like you have more than two of each. So great. Okay, and next is Daryl.
Well, thanks for having us, everybody. I'm Daryl Parker. I'm Chief Technology Officer here at COG Network. Here at COG Network, we've been in the process, or literally the past couple of years, in putting together and along with a security token offering. We're looking to launch here shortly. Given all the current environment that we're dealing with, we'll try to fine tune that as to when the perfect launching time is. But look for us here in the future, and we're gonna myself, I've been in the crypto space since 2013. Bitcoin in the beginning, and on through there. I mean, we've dealt with a number of different things, and we look to sharing with the world what we can do through the technology of STOs.
Absolutely, a true crypto veteran. Okay, last but not least, Zoran.
Hello, thank you for having us on this panel. I am president of Capital Market Authority in Montenegro, and my background is last 10 years. I'm in regulatory business. Before that, I got first brokerage house here in the region. And of course, I'm professor at the university, the most advanced one, or let's say most innovative entrepreneur oriented that for last 10 years or so launched most market applied ideas on financial markets here in the region. So that's my background.
Okay, thank you, Zoran, and thank you, everyone. So let's dive into our discussion. For our audience, the first part of our discussion is going to kind of focus on the benefits versus challenges of STOs. So talking about the differences between STOs and ICOs, and also STOs versus IPOs, talking a little bit about the hype versus the substance of STOs, and also exploring why STOs haven't taken off yet. So panelists, for logistical purposes, I'm going to address some of these questions to one or two people initially, but I just want to remind and encourage each one of you to jump in whenever you feel like you have a relevant piece of information to share. So Kevin and Remo, this first question is for the two of you. I want to ask you a little bit about what the substantive benefits of STOs are when they're compared to other fundraising models. So for example, why would it be beneficial to hold an STO compared with an ICO or perhaps an IPO?
Come on, let's take the floor first.
All right, thanks. Well, let me go first then against the IPOs, for which I have the background and having the experience of advising many in the past, both domestic, regional, and international ones, reaching out here from Estonia to the US. So the IPO is conventional non-capital market transaction where the company sells its financial instruments or securities across the borders to the investors. STO effectively is nothing else. It is the same. Again, the company is selling financial instruments, selling pieces. All the same set of regulations apply. And when I mean the main set, I mean everything related to investor protection. Whether it's good or bad, I mean, in general, I think it's good, because without the investor protection, we have seen all the hassles which have happened in the past, starting from the Great Depression and going forward. Most of the scandals, what we have seen, most of the big fall downs, what we have seen in the capital markets, they all relate in some way or another to the failure in disclosure. So in general, investor protection good. So let's call it the nuisance of the regulation relating to investor protection and disclosure, it all applies. So what's the big benefit then? So the big benefit doesn't really relate to the, that it's STO or IPO, but rather relates to, when we say STO, we mean a capital raising done through the financial instruments which are issued on a blockchain technology. And that's what we call tokens, and we say now securities on blockchain. So when you simply say, what are the benefits of the tokens and blockchain as such? Well, of course, there are several, starting from the efficiency, enabling real-time settlement, reducing risks, enabling to cut the intermediaries and so forth, hence reducing the risks, hence taking away the central counterparties, hence making it more cost-effective, cheaper, more resilient. So those are all good benefits, but those do not really come directly from the technology as such, but they come from the technology combined with a redesigning of how the capital markets operate. So the capital markets are traditionally built based on the jurisdictions. So for example, I don't know, I'm coming from Estonia. So the Baltic states have one capital markets infrastructure, which is called central depository. Now we jump further on, Japan has a separate one. US has a separate one. So in South America, countries have different ones. In Europe, capital markets are fragmented, even though you would think it's all one big same capital market. So now those capital markets are not, naturally connected how you would think. So the blockchain now enables us to design and build the system where all the capital markets in the globe would be connected. So what's the benefit of that? The benefit of that would be that, what Evan can brief us later on is when you have an issuer in Japan and willing investor in US and in Europe, they all can connect and can connect seamlessly without undue hassle. And that's the big revolutionary thing what the blockchain can actually bring about. It is by taking away the intermediaries, by taking away the central counterparties, in the end, taking away from the system also central banks, so effectively enabling people, that is issuers with the ideas and investors with the money, connect directly. And on a secondary market, investors to connect directly. That is what is often called peer-to-peer settlement. And when that happens, a lot of wealth could be unlocked, because imagine all the businesses across the globe who could actually get started because of that, who could have a growth capital thanks to that. So the benefits, now coming back to your question, is there are, of course, technology providing itself several, but the biggest of all is that the technology enables us to redesign the markets, how they operate, and provide a new capital markets infrastructure where everyone should be included and hence be more accessible, hence to reducing the cost of capital and making capital more accessible.
I see. So then, Kevin, I'll ask you about another part of the question. Thank you for that, Remo. So we see all this potential that could come with STOs. It sounds like a lot of the same things that are being said about STOs were also said about ICOs, but there were obviously some problems with the ICO market, at the big boom at the end of 2017. Things were going crazy. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between STOs and ICOs? ICOs.
Sure. Well, I bet you we have all those acronyms. We probably have ITOs, IPOs, IWOs.
Yes.
They're all somebody wrote a paper about it, I'm sure. Just the dangers of going after a capital markets attorney, right? I think I should just leave. I'll just close the door. I think we're done. So yeah, talk about the difference. So if we really compare, I think the ICO bubble, as you said, and STOs, ICOs, I think, were quite more innovative in many ways than what we currently see as far as security token offerings. And why do I say innovative? It's innovative because, well, they didn't have the regulatory, well, they should have had the regulatory burden, and that's part of the reason why the bubble exploded. But they didn't, which allowed people to basically, with no barrier, be able to raise capital and do it basically peer-to-peer, right? They did not have to go through settlement agents. They didn't have to go through any of these protections that are in place inside of a regulated market. So in that sense, they moved much faster, but they also popped much faster. So the bubble expanded very quickly. It also popped very quickly, but it was quite innovative. We've never seen really before the ability to raise money that quick, that fast, across border using a singular payment method, right? Which for the most part was Ethereum, which is most people use when they raise money during the ICO bubble. But when we think about substantiveness and how this market can actually last, regulation is going to come into play. It has to. Why? And just like Remo mentioned, those frameworks are there for a reason. They're not there because they're not put there to hinder, even though sometimes they do hinder, but they're there for a reason. I think the main difference, obviously, if you just look from a high level, is that ICOs we're in an unregulated market. ICOs had a very steep learning curve, right? You had investors that had to come in and totally understand an entirely new concept that had really no crossover into, let's say, traditional investing. They had to learn how to buy an asset that was very difficult to buy with fiat currency, how to take that asset, move it into a smart contract, receive tokens. It was a very steep learning curve. With STOs, as regulation starts to encroach, on STOs, and people start to actually go through you will start to see the kind of, I guess, marriage of traditional markets and these new novel markets, which will make it easier and easier for people to participate. We still have the barrier of regulation, and unfortunately, the acronym STO doesn't mean no regulation, right? So you still have to go through all the hoops, as Remo mentioned. But it is a step forward from ICO in the sense that we can actually maintain this market and grow it. And we can take traditional assets and move them into this STO arena that currently exists. And why we do that, Remo already talked about that, but just to touch a few points. One, I think he didn't mention, maybe there was fractionalization. So the ability to buy, a decimal point of a financial instrument rather than having to buy one. And that may seem like not the biggest innovation, but when you're talking about shares, let's say like other shares around the world that cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, euros, pounds, etc., most people can't get into those markets. Even when you talk about private placements and other things that generally have a high buy-in, most people can't buy into those type of investments. So the STO, the goal of STO and ICO, but the goal of STO going forward, I think, at least most people that are in the STO market, is about getting closer to equality. Equality, which means access to all.
I see. Thank you for that, Kevin. So Evan, I want to turn the microphone to you. You have a little bit of personal experience with this, is that correct?
Yeah, I think we're the first company that's really going to take this on board, at least legally, and operating under the framework of the Montenegros sandbox and the Ignium guys. But yeah, for sure, we're going to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask you a little bit about, what are taking this to a practical level, what are the struggles that you see issuers face when they're trying to tokenize and trying to raise money?
Well, I guess for us, we thought we've done a little marketing on a test group. We had a little group together already before we sort of launched the main product. And from a personal level, I thought that the crypto guys would jump in and think this is a great product. It's in a great area. Niseko, where we're going to do our Basecamp development, is very popular, particularly around Asia and all over the world, really, for its powder snow. But so I thought it would be something that people jump into. But I think the crypto space and those guys, they want to their 100x returns or more, and that's what we saw from the ICOs. And they're not really backed by anything, but people and 99% of the time, people lost their funds. But we wanted to jump on that bandwagon a little bit and back it with something tangible and worth something. So it wasn't necessarily the case. So with our returns that we're offering, perhaps not that popular initially, but once we do reach out to the wider market, and I think like Remo tapped on that untapped capital, I think we'll find a lot more interest.
Absolutely. So can you speak a little bit from a practical level on sort of like if you had to make a pro and con list, of why to tokenize or why not to tokenize? How do you see it?
Okay, well, to tokenize, like the gents have said, we can reach people around the world, and they can get involved for a small sum. So we're offering a property development. Often if someone wanted to get involved in a property, they need to buy one unit. It might be a few $100,000 to get yourself into a property, but here people can get access to a property for, in our cases, as small as €50 or even less in the secondary market, and just get access to that growth or the rental incomes, capital gain, everything that you would normally get from a traditional property investment, but without all the other hassles like signing paperwork and going through the legal process and all that sort of thing.
So right, so the sort of the regulatory integrity is maintained without all of this bureaucracy that typically comes along with these regulatory structures. Okay, I see. So how has your experience with tokenization and the tokenized path differed with, you know, kind of what the expectation was?
Expectation, I suppose we were, we thought initially we might be able to, at least from within the company, we might be able to offer the products worldwide to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who wants to get a piece of it will just, as long as we can get the project in front of them, then they're welcome to join. But again, I think something that Kevin touched on, just because we're operating under the regulation of Montenegro and the sandbox, it doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. So we are limited,
Right.
I believe, to around 12, 14 countries at this stage that we can offer the product to.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll probably expand as the legal investigation goes into other areas.
I see. So thank you for that, Evan. And Daryl, I want to ask you sort of a similar question. So I know that you also have some personal experience with trying to launch a digital security. So can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Oh yes, I sure can. So you know, I think that maybe in our experience, we thought that maybe we could do this, you know, significantly more timely than what we have been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been on this for a couple of years now, trying to deal with all the regulations. You know, whether they be here here in the United States, dealing with SEC, CFTC, anyone else that wants to have their hands in on it. And then also looking abroad to dealing with trying to remain in complete compliance with you know, locations that we may look to launch in. You know, say if they were Singapore, UK, various other, you know, nations around the world. So it's you know, it's definitely been a bit of a challenging experience, but to any of those that are considering doing this, you know, just plan more and you know, realize that there's going to be a lot of legal interaction and other advisors and people that you'll want to bring in to bolster up all your capabilities and everything. So it's
Absolutely.
it has been you know, a fun.
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah. So why did you decide to, you know, sort of pursue the tokenized path in the beginning?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, as Evan mentioned, you know, we wanted to tokenize because, you know, we're dealing with products that are usually reserved for the upper echelon individuals. So, you know, we're using trading strategies that, you know, might be limited to people that can invest at a minimum, maybe $25,000. So we can take some of these different assets that we're, you know, putting into our security token offering and offer these to people that, you know, again, wouldn't have access to that. So that's kind of why we look at the tokenization and the use of fractionalization through the PO process as being a key metric for, you know, distributing these technologies around the world.
I see. And, you know, can you talk a little bit about the process? You mentioned earlier that it's, you know, that you have to sort of bolster up and that it's going to be, that there have been some obstacles in the way. Can you talk a little bit more on a practical level about exactly what those obstacles have been?
Yeah, sure. So I think that maybe a lot of the obstacles would be, you know, trying to, you know, bring yourself and your group up to a complete understanding as to what we have to do to be fully compliant.
Okay.
So there's a lot of dealing with, you know, various different attorneys, whether they be, you know, domestic or international. What I was saying is, you know, we're having to deal with a lot of legal, you know, whether they be, you know, in the Caymans or in the U.S. You know, there's a lot of, you know, going back and forth and having to dot all our I's, cross all our T's, and everything like that.
I see. So at this point, I'd like to kind of open up the floor to the rest of the panelists. So, you know, speaking about challenges that people, you know, companies that are looking to tokenize to pursue this tokenized path, I like that phrase, you know, talking a little bit about these challenges, can you speak a little bit about practical solutions?
Sure. Maybe
yeah, Remo, go ahead.
If I can just open the round for the
Absolutely.
others. So effectively, what we are talking about here, and I'm going on a tangible example here because it's a good practical real life case, and kind of enables to elaborate on. So effectively, what we are doing, kind of, we take the small deal, fairly small deal, on a kind of, I would say, even for the regional level, for the small country or small region like the Baltic states here, and we are taking it global, and that is the very unusual thing. And what we are doing, we're taking the usually illiquid asset, what Evan explained earlier, a piece of real estate in Japan, and making it liquid.
Right.
And making it liquid for the small investors in the context of a small investment in general. So that is the challenge. But at the same time, the regulatory challenges, I've been tackling those for the last 20 years, and I say, this is something what has to be done. So the benefit with a small deal is that many jurisdictions actually provide so-called safe harbors. So during which you actually have a much less, if at all, any bureaucratic burden for the disclosure. So effectively, if you offer, for example, in EU less for 2.5 million or 5 million, then you effectively don't have to register anything what you would call usually a prospectus. So why is that important? Reduces significantly the legal fees and the auditors, what the issuers needs to engage, and making this deal much more effective. The second part, of course, is how do you go about the infrastructure? Where do I offer those instruments to my investors, where my project is actually in Japan and my investors are effectively in Europe and in the US and maybe somewhere else? So that's where infrastructure provider like Ignium and CoinMetro come into play. And it is our task then to handle things, together with Zoran in Montenegro in our case, and to get it regulatorily compliant, to be suitable for those, cross-border settlement and registration purposes. But really the practical challenge is that how do you go about the different investor protection regimes across different countries, across the globe? Because I think, EU has fairly harmonized capital markets regulation. US has harmonized because it is the federation. But when you go further on, they differ quite significantly. So when going forward, the globe has a challenge, or the world has a challenge, unifying the capital markets disclosure regimes similarly as the financial reporting has been harmonized. So that when you do your disclosure document in one place, it is suitable across the world effectively. But the main challenge currently is that you have to think of so many places, so many regulations, whether or not you are compliant everywhere effectively where you offer your instruments. So when Tangible offers its products, across the globe, effectively has to think about across the globe. But when your deal is small, then you come to the cost benefit issue. And that is the challenge.
Right. Very, very good points, Remo. Would anyone else like to jump in before we move on? Yeah, Kevin, go for it.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. So I think there's a big misconception for many people where, and we've already talked about this, just go a bit more granular, where STOs or a security token offering or a digital security somehow is different than a traditional security. And it's not in any way, shape, or form on the high level. There's no difference. And I think a lot of people jump into this thinking they're going to go down the STO route that have no experience doing it in a traditional manner and don't consult anyone that has any experience doing it in a traditional manner. And then they get frustrated and nothing happens, because at the end of the day, they thought the mountain they had to climb was this big. And in fact, we can't even see it on screen. It's off screen. It's pretty big. But I think some of the pros, many of the pros, revolve around the fact that regulators around the world, capital markets, incumbents around the world in the capital markets industry are starting to come to the realization that capital markets are broken, that capital markets are fragmented, that there's no connectivity between one capital market and another, that there's too many intermediaries, all these things we discussed. And it may be difficult for the first guys to come out on this STO market to do a digital security. It may be it is difficult because it's no less difficult than it is in the traditional sense. So you're not getting your life isn't any easier. In fact, it's probably a bit harder for the first guys that do it. But once that is cracked, and once regulators and legislators and the capital markets as a whole, and investors and issuers start to see the pain points that start to get reduced, and a big part of that, like Remo mentioned, is infrastructure. because there's no such thing as a compliant token. There's no compliant protocol, no framework around the world talks about what a compliant protocol is for issuing a digital security. It simply doesn't exist. And in many ways, you don't need one. You can issue a security on the back of a napkin if you really wanted to. I wouldn't suggest that, but you can do that. But obviously a napkin is pretty hard to transfer, right? So the idea here is that I think for everybody in this panel, kind of like the Indiana Joneses of STOs, right? The first guys to get out there and actually do something. I think we're trying to help really change the way the fundamentals of capital markets work. So it's not easier, it's actually more difficult, but we're slowly going to come to the realization that this is the way to go, and it's going to bring and smooth out those pain points that we've already talked about. So there's actually, I can't say from a high level there's so many pros, especially when you're the first guys in the mix. But the pros will come later, and we have to fight to get there. But we're already starting to see some capitulation from, like I said, from regular Montenegro. Just a quick backstory in Montenegro. So Remo and I met Zoran, I think roughly a year ago, and talked about sandboxing and things like this, regulatory sandboxing. And it was the first regulator I think both of us have ever spoken to that kind of responded, said, okay, that makes sense for Montenegro. It makes sense for bringing in innovation. And 6 weeks later, I think we had a framework, decided on and ready up for a vote. And that's what the world needs. The world needs proactive regulators, proactive countries that are ready to help bring in innovation, because without a dynamic regulatory element around the world, we're going to be stuck in the same siloed and fragmented market. And we're never going to get to that point where people actually see liquidity. And that's what we're all trying to do here.
I see. So, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
If I may, Rachel, I would just add to Kevin's point, one very short one, is actually, I do believe even, Tangible as going one of the pioneers out with the security token, especially on a private sector, has one clear advantage when doing it compared to the, conventional way, is the ease of onboarding investors. Because I do believe that onboarding investors without intermediaries will be easier through STO issuance than it would be through conventional means, through all the gatekeepers and through all the intermediaries. Kevin, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yeah, that comes back to infrastructure, right? So one of the things that's needed in this industry is definitely infrastructure, because protocols are great delivery vehicles, but they're not infrastructure. They're not the infrastructure that's needed to connect a global capital market, and there's no standard. So I'd agree with that. Sure, with the right infrastructure, onboarding can be not stress-free, but much less stress than you would currently see in some type of private placement or something of a similar nature that currently happens in traditional markets. I agree with you.
Okay. Absolutely. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk to Zoran. I want to ask you about, sort of your perspective, as a regulator in Montenegro. What has Montenegro's approach been to this? I mean, Kevin talked about it in a few minutes, but as companies have approached you with the desire to hold STOs, what has Montenegro's reaction been?
Thanks. As Kevin and Remo said, we met and we quickly found that we had a similar approach or similar idea about what is coming. We at the Capital Market Authority in Montenegro were innovating or trying to innovate the last couple of years, and with the idea about sandbox and giving a regulatory framework for new ideas, regulated framework for new ideas, we entered this let's say this innovation, this market. Currently in our sandbox, we have several ideas. One is Ignium, another one is CoinMetro, developing infrastructure. We have some ideas on digital payments, or even our university is developing state token issue, since Montenegro is using euro, but is not member of EU. We are verge of becoming EU member, which gives us part of freedom, that we do not have to follow all the EU regulations, which are quite hard. What we found, and I agree with, most, all that my colleagues said, what we found on capital market that we should innovate, or where is I think the chance. Looking at Asia and Europe, let's say the difference in how these two cultures use the personal data. In China, you meet students, they are very ready to put the passport next to the face and send it over internet. In Europe, I think GDPR is quite strong. Then youth population that is coming, which is very easy on taking innovation. They are already in gaming industry and they are becoming how can I say? They have money. They are market that is growing. So I believe all these innovations that we are talking about, it's not aimed only to the mature financial institutions. It's aimed to the growing market of the young population, which is taking over. That's our approach. Why Montenegro is on this? We believe the world is going this way, and let's be in line with that.
Right. I love that sort of proactive attitude towards, looking into the future and looking at the younger generations and what they might be interested in doing with their money. I want to ask you also, can you give some advice for companies who might be interested in doing this? How should somebody approach a regulator, and what kind of, what should they be looking, let's say, what should they be looking for, in a relationship with a regulator?
Asking me?
Yes.
My approach is always to be very honest. What is your idea, what it brings to the market, or what is the benefits? What is the value, added value? The regulators are always, Ramos said that before, regulation is always, how can you say, inward looking in nature, protective for the national looking inwards. But I believe that regulators are becoming very obsolete if, let's say, China or US or any big country regulates something, we all will follow very fast. So I think all the regulators has a weak point, or how can I say, weak. Talk to them freely, openly, and what about your idea, what your innovation, and what does it bring. All of them will like to have it.
Absolutely. I think that's extremely good advice. Something, just being simple and straightforward is extremely valuable. Speaking of things that, being proactive and looking to the future and looking to younger generations, I want to kind of toss this question out to the group, regarding green finance, which isn't directly related to the things that we've been talking about today. However, it is, very important, increasingly important that companies, that capital markets, include environmentalism in their business model. So are there anything that your companies or projects are doing to contribute to green finance and the fight against global warming? And why does this matter?
Yeah, if I could step up to this, I'd like to talk about what we're, part of our model. We are inclusive of some renewables. So we're actually integrating some solar operations into our STO offering. So, it's we see that as being, key to, be able to share that with the world, and we can help bolster the renewables and everything like that. So it's I think that's how we're trying to look at this and step up and try to be green.
Absolutely. Why do you think that this is an important issue?
Well, I think it's an important issue. It's just we can by being inclusive of renewables, we can we can share that with people who wouldn't normally have exposure to this, in the financial markets. So it's we think it's a unique opportunity.
Definitely. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think overall the technology itself that we've all been talking about here, DLT, blockchain, is green. I mean, you can make an argument towards things like Bitcoin and proof of work that definitely expends energy. But when you really do the numbers and you think about the disintermediation that even a proof of work blockchain creates, and the amount of office space and manpower that gets reduced off of the carbon footprint, even Bitcoin is a green energy compared to the financial system we currently have, which requires intermediation and banks and correspondent banks and settlement agents and blah, 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 all the way down the line. So when we're talking about things like CoinMetro or Ignium, who are using technology that is not proof of work, that definitely disintermediates, that pulls carbon footprint, you know, off the map because of not just disintermediation, but also the fact that it's simply easier and takes less, whether it be manpower, hours, or whatever, or energy to move value from one place to another. So I think even without doing anything, if you're in this industry, if you're in the finance industry and you start to look at blockchain or DLT technology, without even knowing it, you're green, or you're getting a bit greener. Yeah, I think we're all doing our part, even if we don't realize it.
I think that's wonderful. Yes, and Zoran.
I wanted to agree with what Kevin said totally, especially the infrastructure they are developing here. It is making very green compared to other financial industry in Europe. So,
yeah. Yep. And yep, maybe I chip in with my short note here. So in addition to what Kevin said, of course, fully agree. In addition, what we have been planning is at Ignium also to create a designated marketplace, perhaps for the green energy companies, green energy investors, and thinking of the incentive, what they could have, really to kind of enhance further bringing forward the green energy investment. Because, you know, it's important on several layers and several levels. What Daryl said, of course, people having access to this exposure, but on a more broadly, simply, it is important. By now, it's kind of been undeniably proven that it does matter for the future of the globe. So we all have to do our part. So comes clearly.
Definitely. We just have a few minutes left here, so I want to thank all of you so much for this really interesting and thorough discussion. Before we go, I'd like to kind of ask you to sum up the most important things, you know, for our audience today. What are the things that you would like them to take away from this discussion today in roughly 30 to 60 seconds each? So we'll go around with each and every one of you, and Evan, we haven't heard from you in a few minutes, so I'd like to start with you.
I'd like you to take away the fact that Tangible and the Basecamp project, in conjunction with CoinMetro as a place to get hold of our product, and Ignium sort of running the issuance, it's something new, something that's not traditional. It's exciting. It's the future, and you know, take a look at it, be part of it, and join us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Zoran, we'll go to you next.
Thank you. On the same, why looking to Montenegro? Montenegro is still not in Europe, so there is a freedom to innovate, and with the regulation as well. And as I told you, we are looking to bridge between East and West, and between young population and mature markets. So welcome through Ignium and CoinMetro, of course.
Okay. I love that little plug there. Wonderful. Daryl.
Yeah, I'll build upon that. You know, guys, you know, you've been listening to us here for you know, past a while, and you know, don't be discouraged. You know, there is a lot that you're going to have to endure and to work through if you're going to launch an STO, and if you're not looking to launch an STO, but to get into you know, this new stage of you know, financial opportunity. You know, look to the pioneers that you're seeing us here. You know, come check us out.
Fabulous. Remo, we'll go to you next.
Both to issuers and marketplace operators like ourselves, I would simply say, you know, embrace the regulation. Regulation is actually our friend. Be open to regulators, because, you know, that's the only way to build the trust. And by collaboration, it can be brought forward. It is easier than you would think when you have the right partners. And I mean, starting from the lawyers, auditors, and everyone alike. So find the like-minded people, and the projects can be brought forward. Amazing things can be done.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Kevin.
So do your own research. I think STOs aren't all bubblegum, rainbows, and unicorns as of yet, but we're all doing our part to get there. At some point in the future, all securities will go from dematerialized to digital. That will happen. And with your help and with everybody on this panel, we're looking to do just that. And at the end of the day, if you're an innovative person, if you're looking to make a change, make sure you do it from the inside. Like Ramos said, if you make a change from the inside, you have to change one mind. If you try to do it from the outside, you got to change 1 billion minds. So work with regulators, collaborate, and get it done the right way. Don't do it the wrong way, because you're going to ruin it for the rest of us. So that's how
yes, bubblegum, rainbows, and unicorns are definitely the first thing that I think of when I think of STOs. So thank you all so much to our audience. Thank you for spending this time with us today. I hope that you check out each and every one of our panelists and their work that they're doing. It's really exciting stuff. Have fun at Singapore Blockchain Week, and take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.